Hello and welcome. The Biological Weapons Convention, the BWC, which emerged from a global consensus on the need to prohibit biological arms, was opened for signature on April 10, 1972 and officially entered into force on March 26, 1975. This landmark treaty was the first multilateral agreement to ban an entire category of weapons, specifically bacteriological, biological and toxin weapons. The BWC was a response to the inadequacies of previous contracts, notably the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which only prohibited the use of chemical and biological weapons, but did not address their development or stockpiling. The negotiations for the BWC began in earnest in the late 1960s, spurred by a UK initiative to separate biological and chemical weapons discussions. The United States' unilateral decision to end its offensive biological weapons program in 1969 further catalysed these negotiations. Clearly, someone forgot to notify Tony Fauci. The BWC was negotiated within the framework of the Conference of the Committee on Disarmament and culminated in a draft submitted by both the United States and the Soviet Union in August 1971. Following ratification by 22 states, including the three depository governments, the US, the UK and USSR, the convention came into effect in March 1975. The BWC prohibits the development, production, stockpiling, acquisition, retention and transfer of biological agents and toxins without justification for peaceful purposes. This includes the use of any means designed to deploy such agents or toxins for hostile purposes. Signatories must destroy existing stockpiles within 9 months of ratification and desist activities that would contravene the treaty's terms. While the BWC represented a significant step towards disarmament, it faced notable challenges. One major limitation is its lack of a formal verification mechanism to ensure compliance among member states. This absence sees significant breaches. For instance, major countries maintained an extensive biological weapons program even after signing the treaty. Reports emerged post-Cold War confirming that violations had occurred throughout its existence. Despite these challenges, proponents argue that the BWC has established an international norm against biological weapons and has made it difficult for non-signatory states to pursue such programs without facing global condemnation. As of the time of this report, there are 187 parties to the BWC and ongoing discussions are underway about strengthening its implementation and addressing compliance issues through regular review conferences every 5 years. It's noteworthy that we never heard a peep from these diligent overseers when the deep state commenced blanket spraying biological weapons across the sky in endless and ongoing chemtrails. Neither did the WHO's global genocide of injectable biological weapons raise a whimper from these blowhard eunuchs. Nevertheless, the Biological Weapons Convention marked a pivotal moment in international disarmament efforts, special emphasis on the word efforts, by categorically banning biological weapons. Its effectiveness is disadvantaged by compliance issues and a profound lack of verification protocols. However, ostensibly, it purportedly remains a critical framework for global security against biological threats, albeit decried by skeptics as being wishful thinking purposes only. However, commitment from member states to uphold its principles is essential for preventing the unleashing of biological warfare in modern conflicts. Several significant challenges arose during negotiations, ultimately shaping the treaty's structure and effectiveness. The geopolitical tensions between the US and the Soviet Union heavily influenced negotiations. Deepening distrust, unsurprisingly, precluded verification measures and compliance mechanisms, which many states saw as intrusive. Unlike other arms control treaties, the BWC did not establish a verification protocol to ensure compliance among member states. Early drafts included limited provisions for compliance, but these were removed during negotiations due to disagreements on their necessity and feasibility. This absence triggered criticism regarding the BWC's effectiveness in preventing violations. Different countries had varying priorities and perspectives on issues like export controls, biodefence cooperation, and the scope of inspections. For instance, developed nations often supported stringent export controls to prevent biological weapons proliferation, while many developing countries emphasised their right to access biological technologies for peaceful purposes. The dual-use nature of biological research posed significant verification challenges, greatly exacerbated by the dangerous gain-of-function activity throughout COVID. Distinguishing between legitimate scientific activities and potential military application is complex, complicating efforts to monitor compliance effectively. In the view of many, all checks and balances were crushed by globalism's rampant jab genocide. Efforts to negotiate a legally binding verification protocol in subsequent years faced numerous obstacles, including disagreement over specific inspection procedures and the role of export controls. The United States' withdrawal from these negotiations in 2001 marked a significant setback for efforts to strengthen the BWC. It lacks a dedicated international organisation to oversee its implementation, which hinders its operational effectiveness. Without an enforcement body, states struggle to address compliance issues. These challenges contribute to ongoing arguments about the BWC's efficacy and the need for reforms to enhance its framework for preventing biological weapons proliferation. Implementing a verification system will be difficult with over 17,000 biology research institutions worldwide. Verification methods used for chemical and nuclear treaties are not readily applicable to the biological weapons context. Its annual budget of $2.1 million is inadequate compared to the OPCW's $32 million for verification, or the IAEA's $166 million for nuclear verification. The working group tasked with compliance and verification has only 7 days booked throughout 2025, which is insufficient to develop a viable verification system. The volatile combination of political disagreements, technical limitations, and institutional deficiencies have prevented the establishment of an effective verification regime for the BWC. Overcoming these challenges remains a crucial priority if this important but increasingly uncertain convention ever stands a chance of meaningful success. Meanwhile, there's no shortage of conventional weapons glad-handed to Ukraine to perpetuate the slaughter unfolding in this war criminal testing ground for weapons manufacturers. Satanic warmongers seek to keep the conflict going for as long as possible to gouge grotesquely excessive profits from the carnage. No humanitarian efforts seek any ceasefire or reduction of hostilities because war profiteers won't risk derailing their lucrative gravy train of mass murder. The UK now funnels £3 billion per year to keep the war going for experimental purposes, testing ever more lethal weaponry in hateful disregard for the human cost. All globalist-controlled governments recklessly plunder public money to feed this unwinnable proxy war that exclusively serves the bloodthirsty avarice of arms manufacturers. As of July 2024, Australia announced its largest single military assistance package for Ukraine of $250 million. This includes air defence missiles, air-to-ground weapons, anti-tank weapons, ammunition and boots for Ukraine forces. In February 2024, Australia provided the International Fund for Ukraine with $50 million to directly support the procurement of priority military capabilities. In July 2023, Australia announced $110 million in additional assistance, including military vehicles, artillery, ammunition, and humanitarian funding. This brought the total support to $790 million, with $610 million in military aid. In March 2023, Australia committed $31 million for Ukraine's energy and humanitarian needs, including $20 million to the Ukraine Energy Support Fund and $10 million in emergency humanitarian funding. Giving Australian public money to a regime using armed press gangs to force resisting civilians into frontline slaughter is obscene. As of February 2023, Australia's war cheerleaders provided $688 million to Ukraine, with $510 million squandered on futile military assistance. Australia's blind support for this unavoidably doomed conflict continually increases, with the total assistance exceeding $1.3 billion as of July 24, including over $1.1 billion in military aid, all of it inexorably destined for incineration in the dying furnace of Ukraine's dismally failed war effort. Thank you for watching.